What's up, everybody? It's your girl B Octavia, and I am back with another video. In today's video, I will be talking about Cornell Jones, and this is Real Talk Tuesday. So here on Real Talk Tuesday, I like to talk about people and situations, scenarios that are very relatable to a lot of people within these urban communities. And I also like to talk about the impact that the person left, whether it was positive or negative, and most importantly, what we can learn from these people or this person. Now, today I will be discussing Cornell Jones. This is a street legend straight out of DC. And I mentioned his name in Rayful's story. And Rayful's name will come up, but not too much. This is about Mr. Jones. Cornell Jones was a major player in the DC drug trade in the 1970s and 80s. He made millions selling drugs, but was also known to be very generous to his community, to his people, you know. Being a very close associate to Rayful Edmond, he and Tony Lewis Sr. helped Rayful Edmond make key drug connections in Rayful Edmond's drug empire. So right now what we are going to discuss is his early life and his background to really understand who we talking about, to understand what environment he came from, and what his childhood resulted in him becoming a man. You know, some people have good characters and some people don't, based on how their childhood was. You know, Mr. Jones spent his adolescent years in a housing project called Hanover. And have I heard of Hanover? Yes. My father has told me stories about Hanover. I've seen multiple articles about Hanover. I've heard Hanover ever since I was a shorty because my mom and dad are familiar with that area as well. His father worked as a bricklayer, and as tiring as that may be, and the long hours and things like that, it wasn't much that amounted from it. There was little pay, especially if you were African American. They really wasn't paying you nothing, and that really hasn't changed, you know. They want to say that it has, but to me it really hasn't. And a lot of times, people who come from a very hard background, they do turn to something that is somewhat easier, but that can pay more. But you don't think about how much time you can spend in jail as a result. And as a result, young Jones made his ends meet by getting into the drug trade in the streets. When he was around 16 or 17, he and a few of his close friends decided to rob a bank. The robbery went successful to the point where they evaded police and everything. They didn't get locked up for that. So in turn of them having their first robbery, their first heist, and it going successful, it put some confidence in Cornell Jones and his people. Still going to high school and in the midst of planning and executing robberies, heists, etc., him and his close associates, they started to have nice clothes and nice jewelry and money, and of course it got the attention of the police. So as soon as suspicion is raised, the police raised their eyebrow of suspicion. Investigation was put underway, and shortly after that, Cornell Jones, still young, was sent to the juvenile detention center for his crimes. He was released in 1975, and by the time that he was released, he already had established a lot of connections on the inside that he can use on the outside. And those connections were to the drug trade industry. He built a plan to smuggle cheap supplies in from Amsterdam and Thailand to his neighborhood in Hanover, which included PCP, heroin, crack, and cocaine. So from there, he was building his own empire. He became a major player by making certain connections, networking the right way, and a person that has everything they need for an empire, but they still help somebody else. Now that's huge. He was actually arrested 4 years before the indictment came down on Rayful and about 27 of his associates. He was busted in a sting operation in 1985. It was reported by police that they found almost $1 million in cash, and an enormous amount of cocaine, cars, jewelry, and a counting machine. And from this sting operation and his arrest, he was facing a maximum of 30 years in prison. There are little to no articles on Cornell Jones. I mean, I know there are some, but a lot of them say the same things instead of what really needs to be said. And I felt like that on Tony Lewis too. Like, if you're going to talk about Rayful and him potentially getting out when I feel like he's already out, in witness protection program, well, then why don't we talk about Tony Lewis, and why don't we talk about Cornell Jones? Like, Rayful isn't the only one that should be in the news and in the headlines. Y'all gotta talk about everybody, because we can't be walking contradictions, letting this one free because he said this and that, and then don't let this one free even though they did the same amount of time, and you feel like he paid his debt to society, but you feel like he didn't pay his debt to society. Like, what's really going on, But Cornell Jones did get released, and this I know. And he did get into some more trouble, and I believe that was in about 2014. And the situation ended with him getting charged with tax evasion. And I will talk about that in part 2. I want to really study more on Mr. Cornell Jones, and that there is a lesson within that as well. It will be interesting to hear what he feels about Rayful Edmonds' decision and where he is now in life.